If we aren't careful, our wounds can suck us into these perpetual cycles of playing out our own trauma and waste our precious time. You're the golden rhythm, got the strength to carry on, won't go, my child, walk on. Hello, beautiful soul family. Britt Cannon here, host of the Walk On podcast, the podcast where I try to demystify spirituality, personal growth and healing, and whatever else I feel like talking about. This week's episode is called Your One Wild and Precious Life. And in it, I talk about how me finding out some news about one of my estranged relatives that they're very sick and may not be with us much longer brought up a lot of complicated emotions in me. Dealing with the mortality of our parents, our grandparents, people, just whenever anyone dies, we don't only experience the grief of losing that person. And also, being estranged from someone doesn't absolve you of that grief. Having a complicated relationship with them, in fact, just gives more triggers, more things to unpack, more things that go unresolved. And obviously there's also the grief of the lack of hope that things will ever be fixed. You know what I mean? Whether you give that up through processing and through the distance or not, it's going to come up again. It's just part of the triggering. And I understand that. But anytime you lose someone in that manner, it does bring up an existential awareness or an existential crisis. Just the closeness, the proximity of death, just makes you think, makes you feel, makes you ponder, makes you question. And it's been going on for me the past week where I've just been thinking about how grateful I feel that I had the wherewithal, the knowledge, the self-love, the drive, the inspiration to put distance between myself and my family of origin, how that has truly saved my life. Because when I think about the life of this person whose physical experience in this lifetime is kind of wrapping up, I think of someone who overgave. I think of someone who self-sacrificed. I think of someone who stayed in an abusive relationship for 50 years. I think of someone who couldn't extricate themselves entirely from a very toxic paradigm. I think of someone who's a victim of generational trauma just like I am. I think of someone who never found the tools to heal. I think of a veteran. I think of a father. I think of a grandpa. I think of just the vast richness of human experience and how beautiful that is, and how if we aren't careful, our wounds can suck us into these perpetual cycles of playing out our own trauma and waste our precious time. And that's why I feel so much gratitude, but also so much grief for this person who didn't stand a chance, it seems, and who couldn't choose himself, and that just made me want to spread the message. The Walk On podcast to me started as I have some carpal tunnel going on because I got a writing job and I'm just like typing my little heart out. That's why, hence the rap. The Walk On podcast for me started as a vehicle to get my message out because I was just thinking, just getting in touch with this sort of consciousness, this awareness of my own healing, of how profound it is, of seeing the patterns in my family play out and see how people would get close to walking away, people would get close to healing their wounds, and then they would regress right back and get swept up into the current of an abusive situation and just couldn't really get their shit together to leave. And I just was feeling better and better and better and better. And this is what happens with recovery and with spirituality in general, is like, once you feel better, once you find the secret to happiness and healing, you want to tell everyone about it. You can't shut the fuck up about it. And that's what happened to me. So the this podcast in general was just a vehicle for me to spread the message, to like, tell the good news, to pay it forward, because I was just feeling so good. And I was really seeing how even people who tormented me, how even people who abused me, mistreated me, were unkind to me, bullied me, whatever, how they were victims of these cycles too. And how really deep down I wish healing for everyone. I really don't hold on to any grudge or judgment, or even if in my moments of pain I wasn't the kindest or the most patient, and I couldn't hold the knowingness and the like inner peace that I have now, I think that's an important distinction. I can hold space for all this forgiveness. I can see everyone as a victim of this multi-generational cycle of trauma that's rooted in systemic oppression. Like, I can really see that now because I'm no longer being hurt directly by it. Like, I'm no longer re-traumatizing myself, and that is what gives me the capacity to be in this awareness, in this forgiveness. But if I had still been being hurt, I couldn't have gotten here. So in my moments of pettiness, in my moments of defensiveness, in my moments of maybe being like, you're a narcissist and you're a narcissist and you're a narcissist, I was entitled to that because I was, you kick a dog enough times, eventually they're going to bite you. So, compassion for me in the past, but also compassion for everyone always, especially now that they're not hurting me. So I really wish healing for everyone I've ever loved. I love still, and I hope for the best for them. I want them to recover. I want them to find love. I want them to find fulfillment. I want them to find happiness. Even for my family, I want them to find recovery and sobriety and healing and health and have a fulfilling and happy life. I really don't hold any grudges to anyone because life is too short for that shit too. But also, on an individual level, I think we spend a lot of time as codependent people. I think we spend a lot of time caring more about everyone around us and everyone's feelings and the perceptions that outside people have about us and our choices. And we're so focused on being a good person that sometimes it pushes us into the realm of toxicity ourselves, in the sense that, like, if you subject yourself to abuse, eventually you're gonna abuse others. Eventually your pain body is gonna be so big and pulsing that it kind of has its own gravitational pull in it, and it pulls other people into it. I've definitely had times where I lashed out at the wrong person, or I made very unconscious choices. A way that I was recently thinking about it is like, not always being able to see everyone else's point of view. So in my limerence video, I was talking about how I was in love with a married man at one point. It was all above board. It was all ethical, but all I could see was his pain and my pain. I couldn't see the pain of his wife, who was having a really hard time with the relationship that we were forming between us. And I just like totally villainized her, and I couldn't see her side of it at all. Now that I've been out of it for several years, and I really see the error of my own ways and just how complicated the situation was overall and how nobody was handling it right, I can tune into my empathy for her. But like back then I couldn't. I was just like getting my own needs met and only thinking about really my own pain. And even that feels a little embarrassing to like admit to, but we all have been there. We all have. It's just like when you gossip about your friends, like all you can think of is how they gossip about you and how they probably deserve it and how you're just venting or whatever. And then if it gets back to them, you have to face the reality of that hurting them. I mean, this is just, it goes on in infinite ways. This plays out. And that's because we're all in a space of pain. We're all just trying to get our needs met in any way we can. And sometimes that makes you a little selfish. Sometimes that makes you a little self-involved. And so even if you have to think of healing in terms of like selflessness or in serving others, like if you end a relationship that you're not happy in, you're setting that person free too. If that person's not right for you, you're not right for them either. And so it's an act of love to decide to end it. It's an act of courage and bravery and like really love for all parties involved to say, this isn't working, we should stop. And life is too short to spend in an unhappy relationship. Life is too short to not get your needs met. Life is too short to pretend you don't like the person you like, or to pretend you're not into what you're into, or to pretend you don't love making the kind of art you love making, or to do any career that isn't the one that you're obsessed with. Or, you know what I mean? It's just like, life is meant to be lived. Life is meant to be joyful. It is also suffering, you know? That is part of the human experience. And I think a lot of times our resistance to suffering is what creates these toxic situations. It's the ego resisting the death of change, but change is the only constant. We're supposed to learn how to flow with changes. We're supposed to listen to our bodies, our hearts, our energies, our intuition as it guides us to, or like towards and away from, what serves us or doesn't serve us in each phase of our life. We're supposed to, like the butterfly, like give way to the next cycle of growth. And, or I should say the caterpillar into the butterfly. We're not supposed to resist. We're not supposed to dig our heels in. We're not supposed to fight the inevitable change that is really ultimately good for us. And when we do that, it's really out of fear. It's like a devil you know type of situation. I can't tell you the ridiculous excuses I had for not ending relationships that weren't good for me and that I wasn't happy in. And when I look back now, it seems so silly and so superficial. And really, I can see like the glaring neon sign of like, you're in fear, you're in fear. And now it seems so obvious, but back then, a change like that seemed like the hardest thing in the world because I was worried about how people would think of me and that choice. I was afraid of being seen like a bad person. I was afraid of being selfish. That's because my whole life, these ideas of like selfishness, of self-servingness, of being destructive, of not loving others correctly, of being like not thoughtful or whatever was always held over my head. I saw the selfishness of the people around me. I saw the selfishness of addiction. I saw the backbiting, the unstable relationships, the name calling, the drama, and I thought, I'm terrified of becoming that, you know? But in my codependence, I just apologized to the microphone. Speaking of codependence, in my codependence, my unwillingness to confront things head on, my fear of confrontation and conflict actually created the drama I was so afraid of because I wasn't telling anyone the truth about how I felt and because I wasn't advocating for myself. And then, this is what I was saying, I was pushing down my actual feelings, and then I would have to like get my needs met in these passive aggressive ways that were sort of like totally unconscious to me. Like I was totally unaware of the covert ways that I was getting my needs met when I could have just said what I wanted. And so living your one wild and precious life, like you are supposed to be messy. You are supposed to be flawed. You are supposed to be happy. You're supposed to be fulfilled. You're supposed to be constantly working on yourself because you are what? A work in progress. We are all works in progress. We don't know everything. We don't get everything right. It's okay to be wrong. Being wrong is part of growth. Messing up is part of growth. Failure is part of growth. And the fear of these less desirable emotions, the fear of not being perfect, the fear of disappointing someone else is what keeps us stagnant, is what keeps us playing small, is what keeps us in those bad relationships, is what keeps us in the devil you know energy, and what makes us afraid of change and what makes us unable to accept where we are so that we can move forward in a more ideal direction. And so when I talk about living your one wild and precious life, I'm talking about how when we die, our souls go out into the universe and become one with the universe. It's like a raindrop in the ocean, right? So, like, it's an individual raindrop until the point that it hits the ocean, and then it is the ocean. And that is our souls in the universe. When we are out there, we are everything. We have no questions. We only know answers. We we're just big and beautiful. We understand life and death. We understand that death is an illusion. We understand the universe. We understand everything. We just are. In the beautiful way that trees are, in the beautiful way that stars are, in the beautiful way that the wind is. Like, there's no ego, there's no judgment, there's no questions, there's no doubt. But there's also no French fries. There's no sex, there's no making out, there's no laughter, there's no sorrow, there's no art, there's no hugs, there's no smells, tastes, feeling, there's no nap in the middle of the day, there's no brushes up from a cat who's purring, there's no anything physical, there's no mess of life. And that's why, even after we achieve our goal of going back to the universe, we wrap up a lifetime, we do the rundown of the life flashing before our eyes, we see all the ways we messed up, we see all the lessons we didn't learn, we deal with all that, we high five Jesus, or whatever. And then we're out there and we're like, this is great. I'm not being challenged. I'm not learning anything. I'm just chilling. I'm floating down the lazy river of consciousness, and that is beautiful. And then we start to get bored, and then we start to miss physicality, and then we start to think, maybe I could go back down there for one more time. Maybe I could experiment a little bit with being human. And we decide to get back on the roller coaster and come down here and experience. So we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the souls that are trapped in these physical forms to go, to grow, to be, to experience, to feel, to fall, to laugh, to cry, to get our hearts broken, to be messy, to make mistakes, to fail and fail and fail and keep getting up and keep trying, and understand that we are living art. That we are living works of art, we are living, breathing poems, and we're supposed to be that. And if you get too bogged down in the material, if you get too bogged down in other people's expectations of you, as I talked about in my Owning What You Want video, like when you embody this energy, when you go with your bliss, people will try to stop you. People who aren't following theirs will get really threatened and really insecure and really jealous and be like, you're doing this wrong and you're hurting me by taking care of you, and that fucking sucks, and how dare you do that? And it's your job just to be like, no. I take care of me, you take care of you, and then we can love each other better, because we're not expecting each other to do the work for us. We're doing the work for ourselves, and that allows us to open. That allows us to put down fear. That allows us to be vulnerable. That allows us to have real conflict and conversations about our feelings and our needs and wants. I mean, do you realize that you can break up with someone and have it be totally mutual, totally loving, and totally, like, cathartic and blissful? It doesn't have to be ugly. It doesn't have to be fear-driven. It doesn't have to be tumultuous. You can just let things go. You can just leave things when it stops working for you. It's when we resist that things get real dramatic. But even that is part of life. And so in the week ahead, I just challenge you to live a little bit harder. It doesn't mean you have to, party or live the rock and roll lifestyle or go on a silent retreat. It can just be buzzing your head because you want to. It can be connecting more presently with the people around you who you love. It could mean doing something just for yourself. It could mean sitting and just feeling your emotions for a second, in whatever small or big way that feels right to you. Just live your one wild and precious life. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to listen to the full episode, that's in the description blocks box, as is all my other stuff. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe. Thank you so much. Happy healing. Bye. This one goes